Listen, a dial-up squeal in a quiet living room, a bike bell in the driveway, the electric hiss of a streetlight waking up. We grew up in a window of time when the world was big and our pockets were empty of screens. Plans were promises. After dinner at the court, 2 o'clock at the food court, call me after 7, the minutes are cheaper. If you missed a call, you missed a call. And somehow, the night still found you. This is a love letter to ordinary days in the 1990s, when being unreachable wasn't rebellion, it was default. When boredom nudged us outside, when we learned patience from rewind buttons and photo labs. It wasn't perfect, no decade is, but its pace made room for wandering and wonder. We'll travel through school and weekends, music and movies, games and the first internet, and end with what's worth carrying forward now. Not to live in the past, but to remember how it felt to live before the feed, when a day could be good without anyone else knowing. The house phone was a lighthouse with a curly cord tether. You called, you asked, you waited, busy signals throbbed like a heartbeat. Answering machines clicked and whirred, and your voice lived on a tiny cassette tape until someone hit play. If you left home, the house kept your calls like a jar kept coins. We carried quarters for payphones, memorized a few numbers, and practiced the art of the fast collect call. "Mom, I'm at the game, come get me!" before the operator could charge. Getting lost wasn't a crisis. It was a story in progress. We looked for landmarks, water towers, church steeples, the orange awning of a diner, and we asked directions from strangers. MapQuest printouts rode shotgun, folded along greasy fast food lines. A wrong turn meant another song on the radio. Waiting gave days their grain. You stood in line at the video store and discovered new favorites by reading boxes. You dropped off disposable cameras and lived with the suspense of whether Saturday night was photogenic. You requested a song on the radio and felt lucky when it finally arrived. The friction of ordinary things made memories stick. The thunk of the VCR, the clack of a cassette flipping to side B, the Discman that forced you to walk slower. And because nobody could ping us constantly, we had room inside our heads. You could bike out, vanish into a game at the park, talk for hours on a stoop, and come home with a story only you could tell. Presence wasn't a strategy. It was just how life worked. Hallways sang with locker doors, sneaker squeaks, and the hum of overhead projectors. We armed ourselves with trapper keepers, stickered folders, and pens that clicked through 4 colors. Notes folded like origami traveled hand to hand. Do you like her? Yes, no, maybe. While teachers pretended not to notice. Computer lab felt like a portal. We slid floppy disks with both hands, navigated Oregon Trail disasters, raced number munchers, and learned to type with Mavis Beacon's calm authority. The TV cart rolling into class could mean anything. A documentary, a planetarium tape, or, if the gods smiled, a movie day. Assemblies promised slogans and school spirit. Book fairs turned the library into a carnival of paper. Nope, you left with a poster, a Goosebumps paperback, and an eraser shaped like a sneaker. Dances were practice for courage. A slow song turned the gym into a small, spinning planet. Dress codes tried to set borders. Fashion kept testing them. In between bells, we learned how friendships form, how rumors travel, and how apologies feel. School was more than classes. It was a training ground for being around other people. 3 to 6 o'clock was a country with its own rules. Latchkey kids swung backpacks on empty couches and self-served snacks that crunched loud enough to be a soundtrack. Outside, neighborhood teams formed without signups. Front yard football with jackets for goalposts, curbside chalk worlds, driveway hoops until the ball sounded dull in the dark. TV blocks set the rhythm. TGIF rolled in like a weekly holiday. SNCC made Saturday feel older than it was. Sleepovers stitched the week together. Pizza boxes, prank calls, truth or dare that mostly dared us to be honest. Basements turned into forts, garages into bands, backyards into cinemas with a sheet for a screen and a boombox for sound. Snacks were cultural touchstones. Capri Sun pouches slumped in the fridge door. Gushers burst like tiny fruit fireworks. Dunkaroos felt illegal, in the best way. Microwave timers taught patience in red numbers. And every neighborhood had a kid who knew how to fix a stuck VHS tape with a pencil. Mixtapes were letters you wrote in songs. You arranged feelings into a sequence, left just enough space between tracks, and labeled the case with a gel pen. CDs arrived like spacecraft, shiny, perfect, and suddenly skippable, unless you held the player flat, like an offering. Anti-skip helped, but we still learned to walk at the beat of the disc. Genres braided together across the decade, grunge's flannels and boots, hip-hop's golden era, R&B slow jams that functioned as a language, country's crossover choruses, and the bright, polished pop that ruled malls and school dances. MTV and radio countdowns were gatekeepers. A mall record store clerk could shape your taste forever. We learned bands from t-shirts and booklets. Who produced, who played bass, who thanked their mom in the liner notes. Music made rooms into portals. A boombox on a porch turned a block into a block party. A discman on the bus turned a commute into a music video. We learned to listen all the way through. Track 7s, hidden songs, the quiet after the outro where you could hear yourself think. Friday night meant the new releases wall and a lap around the aisles. You judged by cover art, by a friend's brother's opinion, by the handful of boxes left. There was a smell, plastic, carpet cleaner, and hope. Rewinding was etiquette, and late fees were the tuition for not planning. VHS culture was hands-on. You tuned, tracking, labeled spines, and taped over televised soccer games by accident. Families built movie nights like small ceremonies. Blankets on the floor, bowls of popcorn bigger than your head. The living room transformed into a theater where the commercials were bathroom breaks. At the cinema, matinees felt like summer even in February. Drive-ins stitched romance to tailgates wherever they held on. TV shaped conversation in fewer channels. Must-see. Nights created shared language. Daytime talk shows bled into school gossip. After-school blocks parented us until parents got home. We didn't binge. We waited, and the waiting made next week a place on the calendar. Arcades glowed like small planets, tokens clinking, tickets spooling, prize counters where you did grim math on how many games it would take to earn a plastic slinky. Street Fighter showdowns drew crowds. Time Crisis taught us to duck. You measured skill by initials on a leaderboard, and respect by who saved you on a co-op continue. At home, console wars split living rooms. SNES versus Genesis, then PlayStation versus Nintendo 64. Controllers felt like handshakes. Memory cards felt like vaults. The rules were simple. Loser hands over the controller, my turn is sacred, and screen peeking is a misdemeanor. Handhelds turned back seats into arenas. PC gaming lived in beige towers, shareware CDS, and strategy guides that took over desks. The games were social by default. Couch co-op built friendships the way passing a controller back and forth builds trust. A great boss fight felt like a neighborhood event. And when someone finally beat a level nobody else could, the celebration was local, loud, and completely undocumented, meaning it lived in us. The early web arrived like a visitor who needed the good chair and the phone line. Dial-up cords sang the same song every time, and you learned to hear the difference between a good connection and a doomed one. AOL trial, CDS piled up like coasters. Screen names were masks we tied on with asterisks and numbers. Away messages were poetry. BRB homework, out, call after 7. Chat rooms felt like boardwalks at night. You learned to read tone without faces, to exit when a vibe went weird, to log off when dinner was called. Email was a novelty, chain letters a superstition. Web pages were wild gardens, GeoCities neighborhoods, Angel Fire Flames, fan sites done with enormous care. We right-clicked, we saved, we waited for images to climb down the screen one row at a time. Even as the web crept in, analog rituals didn't vanish. We printed MapQuest directions and kept a paper atlas in the car. We burned CDs by the end of the decade and still argued about the warm sound of tape. The future was arriving, but it asked permission at the door. Why the last to really live? Because our days were measured in moments, not metrics. We did things without performing them. We had to trust people, places, and our own sense of time. There were fewer channels, so more shared references. There was more friction, so we had to push a little, toward each other, toward the world, just to do ordinary things. That effort stitched meaning into the mundane, but nostalgia isn't a blindfold. The 90s had blind spots, safety norms were looser, not everyone felt represented, and being unreachable could mean being alone. What we miss isn't the decade, it's the balance it forced. Attention paid to a smaller world that rewarded presence. So what can we borrow now? Make device-free windows where boredom can breathe. Plan a neighbor game night or a potluck. Walk somewhere without headphones and see what the street sounds like. Print directions as a ritual, even if you don't need them. Make a mixtape playlist with liner note-style voice memos between songs. Use tech with intention, then set it down. Cue the sounds: cassette click, VHS whir, token clatter, bike freewheel, the porch light's soft hum. A match cut. A glowing CRT becomes a glowing sunset through a screen door. Another, a phone cord spirals into the laces of a sneaker running home. We weren't superheroes. We were kids who learned that a good day fits in a pocket that holds only lint and a house key. If this stirred something, one smell, one song, one sidewalk you can still map with your eyes closed, share your story. Tell us the snack you'd bring to a sleepover, the poster on your wall, the payphone that got you out of a jam, not to prove anything, just to remember together. Streetlights are coming on. Let's go home, and tomorrow, let's go outside again.